If you were to drive about 93 miles east of Medellin, Colombia, you would eventually make it to a town called Puerto Triunfo. Before long, you'd come across the legendary Hacienda Naples. Today, Hacienda Naples is a family-friendly theme park with water attractions, a wildlife sanctuary, and museums. But this is no Disneyland. Welcome back to Billionaire Lifestyle TV, and in today's episode we will be showing how the cocaine kingpin spent some of his millions. Escobar was a Colombian drug lord and narcoterrorist who became one of the most powerful and wealthiest criminals in history. He was the leader of the Medellin cartel, which controlled majority of the international drug trade in the 1970s and the 1980s. Escobar's ruthless tactics, including bombings, kidnappings and murders, make him a notorious figure both in Colombia and internationally. Years before Pablo Escobar went on the run, the cocaine kingpin purchased Hacienda Naples in 1978. Measuring about 7.7 miles, Escobar's estate soon became just as impressive as his power in the 1970s and 80s. As was the case in many aspects of his life, Escobar spared no expense when it came to constructing his paradise. By the time it was finished, Hacienda Naples was home to a sprawling Spanish colonial mansion, a sculpture garden, an airport, several swimming pools, lush lawns, man-made lakes, and even a private zoo, complete with exotic birds, horses, elephants, rhinos, and hippos. Along with being a luxurious retreat for the kingpin and his family and friends, Pablo Escobar's house also served as a display of his enormous wealth. Here, he showed off his massive collection of classic cars and bikes, and even built a racetrack for his go-karts. So at the height of his power in the 1980s, Escobar could land his plane on the airstrip, then walk by his life-sized dinosaur sculptures and decide whether he'd rather enjoy his zoo, his go-kart track, or his bullring. It certainly wasn't a bad deal for the drug lord. After the drug lord was shot and killed by Colombian police in 1993, the Escobar family found themselves at odds with the Colombian government over the ownership of Hacienda Naples. The government eventually took over the land. However, officials soon realized that they wouldn't be able to manage all the animals, so most of them were relocated to other zoos. Furthermore, at some point, the hippos actually managed to escape the property. And then, they began to multiply at an astounding rate. No one knows exactly how many hippos live in the local area now, but researchers estimate that there may be a population of up to 100. Scientists and conservationists are now going back and forth about what to do with the hippos, which many believe are an invasive species. In fact, they might even be changing the ecosystem, making life harder for native plants and animals in the country. While some experts have recommended culling the hippos, others have called for sterilizing them to stop the breeding. Meanwhile, some of the local people have grown attached to the hippos over time, which may make it difficult for either of these efforts to move forward. In 2006, Hacienda Naples was valued at 5 billion pesos, which was the equivalent of around $2.23 million. At the time, the estate had just been declared the property of the Colombian state. By the 2010s, a private company had taken control of the land and began operating the Parque Temático Hacienda Naples, a tourist destination for all ages that includes a water park, a butterfly farm, and museums. You can swim under the Victory waterfalls, or the gigantic sculptures. You can also see ostriches, zebras, meerkats, monkeys, and other exotic creatures, the majority of which are not native to Colombia, but Africa. While there have been some efforts to erase the drug lord's name from the park, tourists still flock to the region because of him. The impact of Escobar lingers, just like his influence on Colombia as a whole. Escobar's image is alive and well in this part of Colombia. People have even been caught sneaking into Hacienda Naples, for the sole purpose of digging up the lawn in the hopes of finding any treasure that Escobar may have left behind. Colombians have a complex relationship with Pablo Escobar. His ruthless criminal activity is well documented, but he also carefully cultivated a Robin Hood image with the working classes of Colombia. He built deluxe soccer fields in the barrios and organized teams and leagues for the children. The street vendors of Cartagena, Las Palenqueras sell t-shirts bearing the face of El Patron alongside replica jerseys of the Colombian hero and Real Madrid forward James Rodriguez. To what extent Escobar was a genuine benefactor for the working classes of Colombia, versus the hagiographical image he created around himself, is hard to judge. Certainly his public funeral resembled the passing of a popular king, and not a mass murderer. But his popularity in the working classes also benefited him when he came to run for public office. Asking Jesus and other islanders on Isla Grande whether El Patron did anything for them, the answer was no. I was struck by the overt friendliness of the people of Orica and by the paradox of their island home. They've never had a police force according to Jesus, yet through the forest was the fortress of the world's most lethal drug baron. Jesus had only ever lived on the island, and he said growing up, you just never went near there. In recent years, Colombia has undergone a marked renaissance, especially where tourism is concerned. And Escobar's legacy is being readjusted accordingly. After his death, the Hacienda Naples fell into the hands of the Colombian government. There are plans to turn the mansion into a drug museum, theme park, and zoo, complete with Escobar's menagerie of exotic animals which still run wild in Puerto Tifuno. But his mansion in La Isla Grande, also government-owned, has steadily fallen into ruin. Beyond the swimming pool, a series of broken-down chalets overlooked the ocean. This is where visiting speedboats would have docked, and where heavily armed lookouts were posted. As with the larger structures, the individual chalet apartments have long since begun to deteriorate at the hands of the relentless Caribbean trade winds. For the people of Isla Grande, life carries on much as it did before Escobar arrived. The mansion in La Isla Grande, now government-owned, has steadily fallen into ruin. Like some kind of coke-fueled Xanadu, the sprawling complex is already being reclaimed by nature. The once lush gardens are now home to a family of giant wild pigs. Stepping into the main mansion, it had been decorated with white tile and marble. The cracked walls still show the 1980s color schemes of pastel blue and coral pinks. The lobby leads to an immense courtyard, shaded with palm trees overlooking the Caribbean Sea. The court is dominated by an oversized and drained pool. Beyond the swimming pool, a series of broken-down chalets overlooks the ocean. This is where visiting speedboats would have docked, and where heavily armed lookouts were posted. As with the larger structures, the individual chalet apartments have long since begun to deteriorate at the hands of the relentless Caribbean trade winds, while for the people of Isla Grande, life carries on much as it did before Escobar arrived. Know before you go to get to the island, which is only a few kilometers long, you have to find a special boat from Cartagena. The island is not in Panama, it is in the Isla de Rosario off the coast of Colombia. The location of the villa is shrouded in secrecy. Try looking on the internet and not a sniff. Your best bet is to arrive on the island and ask around. Just the way Pablo would have liked it. The easiest route is by speedboat if you can find someone.